In the 1960s, Seoul was rebuilding after the war, and the Full Gospel Central Church led by Pastor David Yonggi Cho had grown beyond the walls of its small Seoul auditorium. The crowds were overflowing, the need for space was urgent, and the young pastor knew that God was calling them to prepare for something greater. They began praying for land, and through divine direction, their eyes turned to a barren island called Yoido, a windswept stretch of sand beside the Han River. It was undeveloped, flood-prone, and seemingly impossible to build on. Yet Pastor Cho believed this was where God wanted his house to stand. In 1970, the church began the process of acquiring that land. There were bureaucratic barriers, high costs, and doubts from all sides. But Cho and his congregation pressed forward in faith. The people gave sacrificially. Some sold their possessions, others offered their savings. One elderly woman even brought a small box of coins she had been saving to buy food, saying, "This is my seed for God's house." Every offering became a brick in the foundation of a miracle. Construction began in the early 1970s. The goal was to build a 12,000-seat sanctuary that would become a beacon of faith for a new generation. But then the unexpected struck, the 1973 oil crisis. Fuel prices soared, material costs doubled, and the entire project stood on the brink of collapse. Pastor Cho fell to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of financial pressure and responsibility. He prayed, "Lord, you told me to build this house, but the burden is too heavy for me." Yet even in crisis, God moved. Suppliers agreed to delay payments, contractors offered to work longer hours, and members continued to give. No one wanted to see the work of God stop. Slowly, through prayer and perseverance, the building began to rise. Concrete was poured, steel beams lifted, and the walls of faith took shape on the island once written off as unbuildable. Finally, on August 19, 1973, after years of sacrifice, prayer, and supernatural provision, the doors of the Yoido Full Gospel Church opened. The first worship service filled the massive sanctuary with songs and tears. Families who had given everything stood in awe as they worshipped under the roof their faith had built. Just a month later, on September 23, 1973, the church held its official dedication during the 10th Pentecostal World Conference, a gathering of believers from across the globe. Pastor Cho stood at the pulpit and declared, "This is not the work of man's hands, but the work of the Holy Spirit. May this place always be filled with His glory." From that day forward, Yoido Full Gospel Church became a living testimony of what can happen when ordinary people trust God completely. By the 1980s and 1990s, the congregation grew beyond 700,000 members, and the sanctuary remained the heart of a spiritual movement that touched the world. But the story of Yoido's construction was never about size or fame. It was about surrender. It was about a people who gave until it hurt, a pastor who prayed until he broke, and a God who turned an island of sand into a sanctuary of salvation. Today, that same building still stands on the banks of the Han River, surrounded by skyscrapers, yet still echoing the prayers that built it. It stands as a symbol of what faith can build, what sacrifice can sustain, and what the Spirit of God can complete when His people believe. By faith the walls rose. By prayer, the roof stood, and by the Spirit, the house was filled with glory. Verified facts. Church founded, 1958, tent meetings with Choi Ja-shil. Seoul Church built, 1962. Land for Yoido acquired, early 1970s. Construction period, 1971 to 1973. First service, August 19, 1973. Dedication, September 23, 1973. Seating capacity, 12,000. Pastor, Reverend David Yonggi Cho.